Welcome to Basic Binges on the Nom Talk Network, folks. We are here today to talk about episode 7 of The Last of Us. As we do every Monday, we get together, we grieve because the show is absolutely emotionally devastating. Every episode, this is never going to be a happy show. I'm going to be honest, but it is a wonderful group therapy show, and you can't have a group therapy without the best group in the world. I'd love to introduce everyone, for those of you who don't already know them. I'll start with Mr. Jordyn Orozco. Sir, how are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you all. I'm so excited. We've added people to our little community. Carolyn, I'm so excited you joined us. And Mike, you are the ringleader and the leader of our community. So it's good to see you all. I'm sipping on a little Mai Tai. Obviously, it's like a tradition. I don't know. Like I just feel like I have to be like sustained by a Nom Talk Mai Tai every time. And I made some microwavable cheese sticks because
Ooh.
I just felt like cheese sticks tonight. So yeah, that's my nom.
I always feel like you have the best food, Jordyn. You have like ribs, you got cheese sticks. You had
It's
something
just
good
because
last
I'm
week
a
too. I forgot.
it's just because I'm a fat ass and I just need to just like indulge every night.
Dude,
So
no. I
it's
if
fine.
you can you if you can eat as good as you do and look like you as good as you do, I mean, like, I'm jealous of that, bro. Come on.
Love it.
Like, you look
Love
awesome.
it. You look
Um
better, Mike.
Hardly. But you know who does look amazing? Carolyn Poddig. How are you, Carolyn?
I'm good. I'm good. It's raining. We're getting ready to, we're getting ready for the finale. I've been trying to catch up on other shows. I've been doing some rewatch of another show. I don't know if people have heard of it. It's called The Mandalorian. I don't
Oh,
know.
What's that?
I
yeah.
I've
know.
never
It's
heard of
it's
it.
really good. It's about a guy and he's got a kid and he carries the kid
I mean, The
across.
Last of Us.
Yeah,
Oh my
it's
God. I love it.
it sounds a lot like it. It sounds a lot like it.
I love it.
And then, just in general, trying to catch up on my media going into 2023. Sadly, I'm not eating anything exciting today. I do have my extra healthy water that is so healthy that it's invisible, or that Joel's drinking all my water. But that's basically my um
I
What
love
what
it.
honestly, whatever you can use to get folks to get you to hydrate, right? I mean, that's what we need. But yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, as always, I'm your host, Mike Manalo. And yeah, I'm sipping on my usual can of Coke Zero. And today, because I had a hard day, I've got like a packet of sugar and cookies and shit like that. Whatever Target like comes up with these like holiday candy thingies. But they're supposed to be trail mix, but I don't know any trail mix that's exclusively chocolate and cookies. That's just diabetes and cavities. Um,
Yeah.
anyways, yep.
Yeah.
But guys, let's get into The Last of Us. Yesterday, another emotionally impactful episode. And this one, actually, for those gamers out there, because we are on Twitch after all, was based off of a little played DLC content piece called Left Behind, slash also comic book piece. Neil Druckmann did adapt this as a comic book as well. And in the DLC level, I guess, that you downloaded, it was a chapter of The Last of Us that no one had seen when they played the first game, that took place, as this one does, after the events of Joel getting stabbed, and this kind of house in the middle of winter that no one, I'm not going to reveal what's going to happen next, because we're going to get to that next week. But essentially, between the fall and the winter chapters of The Last of Us. And Left Behind was very, very, it was well received. And one of the best things that everybody got out of it was really that backstory of Ellie. The backstory that we didn't get at the very beginning of this series, that they kind of waited and saved until this very moment, not just to honor the game, but also because in the context of what Ellie has to deal with Joel, namely, the decision of whether or not to cut and run and leave or to stick around. It reminded her of a really poignant moment where the last person that she ever really had feelings for, loved, wholly, she's remembering that. And to me, this was such a heartfelt episode. It's wonderful. It's well executed. But I wanted to ask you guys what you thought of it. And Carolyn, since you're the one that hasn't really played the games or is kind of coming into this universe new and fresh, I wanted to get your thoughts first.
First of all, visually, if the game is any, I mean, from what I've seen from like screenshots and stuff and from the game, if it's anything like like the visuals that were in this, that's beautiful. Like it was so beautifully shot and beautifully created. Story wise, I loved the extra world building that we got with Fedra and with like the divisions and the loyalties. It kind of gave you an idea about like what they were doing, so it threw a little bit of extra, because remember, it's not a zombie story, it's a human story that happens to have zombies in it. And I loved that queer love story. Oh god, I was like, if only I hope that there's at least one of those stories that ends happy, but I am a happy camper seeing so many of them show up in a show at once. I was like, really? Oh, and having Storm Reed and Bella Ramsey, having two NBs on screen in the same film, or in the same TV show, borderline film, was awesome. Was just so awesome to see. And their chemistry and everything. And like I said, if it's like the game, if that's like what you see in the game, then I would play the DLC, because just damn.
I'm glad that you liked it. And yeah, absolutely. Storm Reed really knocks it out of the park. Obviously, we know Bella's going to knock it out of the park. She's been doing that for 7 episodes, but Storm just comes in and it's this wonderful relationship. And yeah, to kind of address one of the things that you touched on as well, that is inherent to Ellie's character. She is a lesbian. She's gay. And the fact of the matter is, if anyone's watching this show and takes issue with the LGBTQ storylines and plot lines and characters of this, then they're not really fans of The Last of Us, because quite frankly, this has been inherent to these characters since the very first game, So I'm loving it as well. It not only is loyal and very, very faithful to the spirit of the game, the characters, all of that, but it's nice to have a story that actually really puts light on this underrepresented community in film and television. But yeah, Jordyn, I'd love to hear what you think. Did you play the DLC content? I knew you played the game, but did you play this one, Left Behind?
Yeah, so when I originally played the game, it was like I think I was like maybe 2 hours into finishing the game, and so I didn't like actually finish it. But it was sort of like when I like got into like the whole TikTok during COVID, and then like you see the things, and like you subscribe to nerds, and like you're like, oh, what's this? And then you like kind of get like a broken visual representation of like The Last of Us, right? And then when I sort of found out that Ellie was gay, right? Like that she was a lesbian, and all, I was like, yes, I love it. I love this. I love the representation, right? And I think I've said this from jump, and call me out, Mike, if you haven't heard this, but I have always loved the fact that like this entire series has made LGBTQIA plus like stories norm, right? Like we sort of got like we got that with like Schitt's Creek, right? Where it was like, oh, it's normal, it's fine, like that's what's going on, and Schitt's like hilarious, like dead. Like that was my show for the entire fucking pandemic. And then you get, sprinkles here and there, but this one I'm like, this is like in your face, but almost in a way where it's like you have to swallow it, where it's like palatable and you can't say anything about it. And the people that do say things about it, you're right, they're not true fans. They're like, you haven't really played The Last of Us 2,
Yep.
you haven't played the DLC, right? And so I think with this whole thing that happened, right? You kind of saw it building like in the entire episode. And I was like, this is cute. Like, this is an adolescent, like, coming of age LGBTQ story. And we need more of this shit
Mhm.
for people that don't necessarily identify or don't like feel comfortable identifying as that yet. And this episode, it was just, and we'll talk about it in the latter half, but it was tear worthy, right? Like it was like episode 3, like tear worthy. Like this is why Ellie is the way that she is, right? Like, and this is why she's like, no, like this is what I'm going to do in the end, right? And I loved it. I loved it. It was great.
One of the things I loved as well, there's so many in the past 6 episodes prior to this one, you get bits and pieces of Ellie's life, as she's kind of describing them to Joel, from the Mortal Kombat Easter egg a couple of episodes back, where she's talking about Melina and how she played this game with her friend and everything. You hear very prominently in one of the more emotional scenes, she tells Joel, it wasn't the first time that I've harmed someone or killed someone, and we are left wondering, oh, what's the story behind that? And we finally get it, which is lovely. But to your point, Jordyn, as well, one of the things I loved is, it's not even that this is all out front, LGBTQ storytelling. This is universal storytelling at its best. This is not a story about, I mean, it is a story about a girl, two girls, honestly, coming to terms with, of course, who they are as people. But more than that, it's about first loves. It's about your first kiss. It's something that's so universally inherent to all of our stories that, to me, it doesn't matter if you're gay or straight or anything, you can relate to this, moment with Ellie and with Riley. And it's beautifully directed, beautifully touching, very emotional, just wonderfully done, honestly. So starting really, I'm going to skip through Ellie, Joel kind of shoving Ellie and saying, get out of here, and her sort of hesitating for a very split second, which is what kind of triggers this flashback. I want to get straight into Ellie running laps and kind of talking to, at Fedra school, talking to her principal. And her principal's kind of telling her, hey, you've got a choice. I think you're bright. I actually really like you, even though you've decked this person and gave her like 15 stitches or whatever, um, I'm gonna let you go, and here's your Walkman, but you also have two choices, a cup, which is kind of like you being poor and taking shit from people who are Fedra employees, like the Bethanies of the world, or these keys, which basically symbolize you going further and being able to be the person to give shit to the Bethanies of the world. And of course, Ellie starts to kind of, the fact that somebody believes in her, is meaningful to her, and it starts to get her thinking, hey, maybe I do have a future, and it's kind of impactful what he says to her. But it's sort of interesting because she's kind of leaning towards one direction, and when we meet Riley, she's sort of leaning towards the other direction. Obviously she's full-blown Firefly, and their ideologies are kind of in opposition to each other. Let's say. So I'm going to stop there. Jordyn, what'd you think of all that? The introduction of Riley, Fedra School, some of the music that they were playing, Pearl Jam on her headphones, all that.
Yeah, I loved when they went to the mall and then it was like, uh, it, it was a, it was Take on Me, right? Like, and then it was like the lights came on and everything, but I kind of liked that because these two individuals had never experienced those generations, right? Like all they experienced was the music and they never experienced the mall, which was like a weird, like, it was a weird, like, millennial thing, I think for me, where I was like sitting here and I was like, what? You've never seen like a Bath and Body Works? Like, you've never seen a body shop? Like, what? And they're like, yeah, like they used to buy this, and then there's like a Victoria's Secret, right? Like, and they're like, blah blah blah. And what's so normal to me, like what's normalized to me, like they were like this, like I don't know why they spent so much time looking at this shop, right? Like, and then they're like, yeah, I understand, but I still don't know why, right? And it kind of like breaks down the fact that like we spend so much time on this like frivolous shit, and we don't necessarily like look at like what really matters, right? Which is like the people that surround us, the morals and values that we're taught, right? Um, but I, you know, I thought it was so Ellie, and I thought it was so badass for her to just be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna deck you. Like, you're gonna get fucked up." And then she like goes in, and then her like superiors like these are your options. She's like, "I'm gonna take this," and then for her to be rebellious and to like leave, right? Like, with that, and um, I don't necessarily feel that like, I think that was where Ellie split, where she was like, "Yeah, I'm Fedra, but also like I see where the Firefly comes in," and we see later on like maybe why she sort of became more, you know, favorable to the Firefly influence, right? Like um because of her adventure in this entire sort of like series, but I thought it was y- you get the rigorous, you get you get the militant, you get all of that, and then you also get but there's more. Like there's more than that, and I think that's what happens in this episode.
Well said and agreed. You do get a sense that there is a lot more going on here. And I one of the things that I love that you kind of pointed out is Ellie is taking so much joy in these things, like the escalators, these stores, like Victoria's Secret and everything like that she's never seen in her life. And it's sort of these things that people in general take for granted. This is a show, after all, about living, about life. If you didn't get that from the Bill and Frank episode, you certainly should get it here as well, because there are so many luxuries that we have, as society today. I can go to Fox Hills or Westfield Mall and shop easily, and I don't give it a second thought. But then for someone like Ellie, this is like something that's never happened before. So it's really crazy how the show kind of reframes these things that we have into these treasures. Carolyn, I'd love to get your thoughts. What'd you think of the introduction of Fedra School, the music, the introduction of Riley, the ideologies, all of it? What thoughts?
So a while back, I compared Ellie in The Last of Us to coworkers of mine that are Gen Z, and I stand by that comparison because the everything from not to make it overly serious, but this is The Last of Us, is everything from the more militarized school district where it's like, you don't really have opportunities for creativity or freedom because you're in this position where, you have rules and regulations that you have to follow. The push towards something more adult, the push towards something more mature, the push towards more, I would argue, conservative values was something that I definitely noticed. And that's for Ellie and for the world that they live in, it's like it does look appealing because, that's a sense of survival. And for some people, having that, for some people, those very basic things is like, survival. And you could definitely see how in the beginning with cordyceps, there might have been people in the government who were very prepared and even excited for things like Fedra to have happened. And then you progress into, and I remember I actually watched the after show for this one because it was just so pretty. Like, I wish that the mall wasn't overgrown and infested with zombies, because like I would shop there with its weird, what we like to call bisexual lighting with the purple and everything, and the pink, and I was just like, I feel this, I feel at home here. um but the after show called it, what would it be like to skip school in the world of cordyceps, in the world of Last of Us? And it's like, this is where you'd go, you'd skip school and you'd go with that kid that, you maybe had kind of a romantic interest in, that wild kid, that bad boy, the Danny Zuko to the oh god, Sandra D. The
Andy.
Danny Zuko to the Sandra D. So Danny Zuko, took Sandra D of a sort out to the mall. And as a millennial, and again, drawing it back to the comparisons with my coworkers, I think that they have a very different grasp of materialism and of like shopping like that than I do. And even like they're not afraid to go to the mall. It's just like, they're gonna go to the mall and they're gonna actually do something like what Ellie and Riley did. They're gonna go to the mall and they're gonna, not buy anything, but they're gonna do things. They see it, but it's just like, okay, it doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm here to go to the club, or I'm here to go to this, or I'm here to go to that. And it's like you find them less concerned with material materialist things and more concerned with experiences. And I definitely got that vibe from Ellie and Riley being in this mall, and it was refreshing to see. As someone who grew up with so much excess, it was refreshing to see two people who were just surprised by it. It reminds you of how lucky you are to have gone to the mall and ridden the carousel just like you would at South Coast Plaza, or gone to the mall like you would at downtown Disney and just run around in the fountain, like just all those different places that you would go where you have that excess. And maybe next time you go, you shouldn't next time you go shopping, we shouldn't be looking at what we're buying. We should be looking at the artwork and the architecture that they put into it. So that was nice. Heartbreaking, but nice.
It is actually really funny how the show kind of indulges in these sort of these small pleasures in life, and the experience, as you put it, Carolyn, of going to the mall rather than actually the mall itself. And I think it touches very beautifully on kind of what Jordyn said about the appreciation of the people that you're with. If you're doing it with someone like Riley, then the mall can be the most magical thing in the world. I also really wanted to gush about the soundtrack because Aha, Take On Me is my favorite 80s song of all time. It is also incredibly important to the character of Ellie. If you've played the game, it's a nice little nod to something that you see in The Last of Us Part 2, which I won't spoil here for those who haven't played it, but they do reference Take On Me in that game. And I also, this wasn't referenced in the game at all, but the carousel was actually playing Just Like Heaven by The Cure, which I also loved. It was like the nicest rendition of a carousel song you could ever get, because it's The Cure, it's Just Like Heaven. But yeah, I kind of loved the soundtrack on this episode. It was just it was lovely. So yeah, so Riley and of course Ellie get to the mall, as we mentioned, and Riley promises the 4 wonders, scratch that, the 5 wonders of the mall, because one of the wonders becomes the escalator. And they go and they discover the next wonder, which is the wonderful carousel. The wonder after that is the arcade, which was awesome. The 4th wonder is technically the joke book. And then the 5th wonder is, of course, the Halloween shop. And it's funny because somebody, I was watching, I believe it was New Rockstars or another YouTube channel, breaking down some of the Easter eggs from this episode. And forgive me for, this isn't my original idea, but I think it was a really cool connection that they were saying. It really kind of, the 5 wonders embody the experience of growing up, I think. The accidental escalator is supposed to be like, oh, a childbirth, because sometimes those are accidents. The innocence of riding a merry-go-round, it's the first ride that you can get on when you're that small. Becoming a adolescent through something like an arcade, but also like the Victoria's Secret moment. And then I guess experiencing your first kiss and experiencing your first love at the end. And I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at it. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. What you guys think about these wonders potentially symbolizing the journey of youth and growing up and adolescence. Carolyn, I'll start with you. Thoughts on that potential analogy?
Well, I like that analogy. I mean, I actually really like that analogy, because it's like I was saying, for somebody, it's a very millennial experience though. And so it was really, I felt my age for a moment when you said that, and now I'm comparing it in my head and I'm like, oh no, I'm old. But because it really, they're good examples of things that, like, when you do grow up in a mall, you do and you spend all your life there. that's an encapsulation of American culture. So I would argue that it is a uniquely it is a milestones, but it was showing them through a uniquely American way. And when you compare it to last episode with um Tommy and the commune, and then you see this monument to excess that has been destroyed, but you have all of these people who are experiencing the real joy of the art of what it is. Then you there's a really interesting parallel of, like, okay, it's really not about the things, it's about the experiences that we have. And growing up, and growing up through that, I'm seeing a very interesting metaphorical parallel. But I like that idea. Also, when you said that, I just realized that with what happens in the Halloween shop, it's full of graves. So thanks.
Yeah, that's the journey of life too. You die.
You end up with what happens in the Halloween shop. Their whole thing is that the two of them finish looking at a grave. That's
Oh, that's heartbreaking. But anyways, Jordyn, what about you? What'd you think of just kind of that metaphor? Which, by the way, it was Screen Crush. To give credit where credit's due. It was a really lovely episode of recapping the Easter eggs. But yeah, this idea of this mall kind of being a metaphor for life, journey into youth and adulthood.
Yeah, you want to know what's funny? I didn't even look at it like that. And it was only because I was looking at it for, review purposes, and then now that you said that, it's very interesting because, when Ellie gets taken out of her sort of environment, right? And then she's like, "No. Okay, maybe." And then you're like, we've all had that sort of like rebellious spirit, right? Where we've been like, "Cool, like let me do something different," right? And then we sort of get this like Stranger Things vibe, right? Like when the mall gets turned on and you're like, "Oh, cool, like you're in another world and like this is what's going on." And um I, you know, it's interesting because you're right. Like I would go to the mall, right? Like to be like, "Oh, like I want to get this at this store," and it would be like $2, and I'd be like, "Oh, I got a shirt for like $5." And then like, but you'd be like, "Oh, the guys or the girls or all of them," and it would be like it would be like uh an adolescent experience, right? Like that you would go through and like you would cherish, right? And I feel like Riley was giving that to Ellie in this, right? Where she was like, "Yeah, like experiences, blah blah blah." Um, so it's very interesting that you say that because um yeah, it definitely was a reflection on adolescence, but also like adolescence in a time when like you couldn't necessarily be a kid, right? Like you couldn't necessarily be a kid and feel safe like 100%, even though Riley was like, "No, it's fine. Like they cut this place off, like it's good." Like and then eventually we see the clicker, right? Like we see the thing that attacks them and that eventually becomes the downfall of this, relationship, but also the sort of the plot line to Ellie's story, right? And so I feel like it was well played, um, and it definitely was sort of like a Riley knew what she was doing, and Ellie was just sort of along for the ride, and it was a really good experience.
100% agreed. I'm gonna pause everyone really quickly because Cue Ball, our good friend, redeemed hydrate. So everybody, take a sip. And as we do that, I would like to give a shout out to our two friends on the chat right now. Boba Fett, how you doing? And of course, our wonderful good friend Cue Ball, who's always in for the ride. Thank you both for joining. We love you guys as always. Don't forget to spend your Nom Talk points on crazy shit to get us to do whatever the hell you want and to make us look like complete asses.
Really, Mike? Don't encourage that. Also, cue ball, Q. I'm so disappointed that it took this long for me to follow you on Instagram. So please don't get mad. And please don't
Aw.
redeem your Nom Talk points to get back at me. Please, please, please.
Oh
feel like-
my.
I feel like
That
you're
would
just
be terrible
inviting
if you
him.
did that.
Do that.
Terrible.
Damn it. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I opened the floodgates.
It's okay. This is the only show that you could do this kind of crazy stuff at, guys. So while I won't encourage it for my own self-preservation and for also Cue Ball says he promises, Jordyn. So
Yeah.
but I think you're safe for now, at least. We'll see. Oh wait. So
Oh,
Boba
God.
Fett redeemed word ban, and the band's not in place yet, but the word is the. So it's going to be very difficult for us,
Ooh.
but we are going to try to move forward without saying the word the, starting now.
Wait, what word?
The. THE.
Like, okay.
The article. So we'll start now. It is gonna be tough, but God, show represents loss of innocence in a way, because Ellie and Riley lose their innocence at the end. Damn it! At end of this episode. But that being said, okay, episode progresses to Riley giving Ellie Joke Book Volume 2 and talking to her about joining Fireflies. Yes, and that ends up sending both of them into a little bit of conflict with one another. I kind of got through all of that a little bit better.
That was
Yeah,
good. That was
so-
good.
That was good.
So, Jordyn, what did you think
Oh.
of that?
Oh,
I
hell.
guess.
Oh God. I thought that it was extremely well done. And that way in which it was done was great. I also thought that way that they sort of referred to both of Fireflies and Fedra was great. I feel like we saw conflict and it was well done in a way where it was palatable for both people that had played game and not game. And
Well done.
you know, yeah, and my friend who is watching this with her husband is enjoying this and is also following along in a way where they can understand that you know, this is what's going on versus like, oh, we're a purist, like this shouldn't happen, like this shouldn't, be a thing. And yeah, it was yeah, I thought it was done in a very spectacular manner.
Well done, sir. God damn, that was good. That was good. That was good. Stephanie, is word ban over?
Why did I do
No? Okay.
Oh,
2 more
boy.
minutes. Carolyn, what did you think of scenes with Riley admitting that she joined Fireflies to Ellie?
Let's talk about Riley, Ellie, and apocalyptic organizations. Apocalypses are funny things they bring people together and tear people apart. From a societal perspective,
Period.
stories like this represent common divisions that we often see. Stories where people are forced to make choices between good and evil remind us that being human is more than black and white choices. One could argue we're one of mind. One could argue we're one of mind.
Uh-oh. I think we lost Carolyn. Did we lose you?
Oh,
Right when we
no.
were.
That
Oh,
Fedra-
there we
Okay,
go.
shoot.
and
Right.
they it was one could argue
We're clear, by the way. You could use the.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. One could argue that in the beginning, Fedra might have had a positive goal. However, like I pointed out, when you're coming from such a place like that, I would argue that the government prior to, even if we're thinking about 2003, the government prior to it was very conservative. And if you look at where the government was in 2003, you could definitely see what would put in place policies that would eventually become sort of the fascist organization that people are describing it as. Bans on individuals because of their skin color, the creation of the TSA, the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, all of that leans into the creation of Fedra for this fictional reality. So it's something that people can relate to.
Yeah.
I find myself in a position where I cannot in good conscience defend Ellie's brainwashing and propaganda into believing, however briefly, that Fedra is a good guy, because they are very clearly not. I can see how she would come to that conclusion, speaking solely out of ignorance. For Riley, Riley's decision starts with, "Oh, I'm this person saw me and they liked me and they wanted to do this," and then as it progresses, there's like, well, Fedra was going to put me in some place that was kind of crappy anyway, so I didn't really want to be there, so I made my own decision. And that's ultimately what Ellie wants too, and that's ultimately what she thinks Fedra will give her, but it's not, and it won't. Is the idea that you can make your own decision, and it's a moment that where both of them kind of grow up a little bit, because I think that Riley is very clearly torn about leaving to go with the Fireflies, because she doesn't immediately bail. She just kind of sits there and allows herself to be sad. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think she would have left. Yeah. Period, because she cared. And Ellie ends up going back. So the two of them end up finding the third path, which is the only path that works, which is the democratic socialism of the commune. So that's the ultimate, so there's always a third option and a third road, but both of them arrive at that conclusion based on realizing that both of their positions are difficult. And it makes me wonder, I am hesitant to believe, rightfully or wrongfully, that the Fireflies, even based on like apocalyptic scenarios like Terminator and everything else, I'm really hesitant to believe that the Fireflies are all sunshine and rainbows and golden unicorn farts. I really am. So, neither side is good, and ultimately Tommy and everybody else, that's the right one. So, when in doubt, your two roads diverged in a yellow wood, I took my car and plowed right through the middle.
Well said, Carolyn. And by the way, bravo guys for doing the word ban. Cue ball, I also wanted to say, I think you wanted me to read a point of yours. I'm more than happy to. I do not see it right now. If you want to resend it, I'm more than happy to read that out. Because I think that if you have something really wonderful to say and contribute, send it through. I'll definitely read it out for you.
Mike deleted it. He specifically deleted it.
No.
JK. Resend. But that being said, No, Carolyn, you definitely have a point. I'm hoping members of Congress are watching The Last of Us and taking notes, because that would be
They're
kind of
not.
amazing. They're not, but that would be amazing. I will say this though, and I not that I disagree with you, because I don't. I actually do think they do represent jackbooted fascists, essentially, and Nazis. But at the same time, when we take a look at the idea of not having some sort of control over a QZ, we get Kansas City. And
Mhm.
that was almost infinitely worse, because people were abusing power to meet their own personal benefits and self-gain. When you've got a situation like a Kathleen versus a Henry and Sam situation, it kind of makes you grateful for the idea that there might be some sort of structure there, of course, right?
Mhm.
So do you think that Fedra, in some ways, because you're right, there's always going to be shitty, but also some decent people on one side and the other side as well. But do you think Fedra might potentially still be somewhat necessary at all,
Oh, absolutely.
or else you'll get a Kansas City? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that but again, going back to there when George Washington died, there is a quote. Apparently, his last words on his deathbed were, "Do not form political parties after my death, for they will tear this country asunder." And then he dies. Um,
And then
and
everybody formed political parties.
and everybody forms political parties. And it is the personal investment of people in their own interest. It's the personal investment that people have of their own interests in those parties
Yeah.
that makes them have a serious problem. Fedra is necessary, full stop, because when you have so many people, I'm just expounding tonight. I'm so sorry, y'all. Um,
That's an
I'm
interesting
so
point to expand on.
well. Fedra is very uh Fedra serves a necessary goal, which is the idea that in the wake of having the total displacement of human society, you have to have somebody pick up the pieces. Otherwise, we will revert to a totally agrarian nomad society. And um human nature has consistently pushed with all of our technology towards the idea that we are moving towards a larger group society, a consciousness. If we did not move towards a conscious group where we were all together and we all agreed on a singular civilized concept, all of the gains that we have made as a species would disappear, because everything, and this is the biggest problem with people that control things like social media platforms and with other stuff. Ellie and Riley exist in a period where they don't have that access. Fedra is trying to keep them going towards the single goal where you have to have everybody united, and it's terrible because it gives people an opportunity to abuse that, and people abuse that system all the time. You don't have to set foot on the internet to realize that people abuse that system where they have a sense of people who are trying to move everybody together, and everybody's going to be like, I'm going to exploit it because I see the crowd moving that way. People abuse it all the time. At the same time, unfortunately, it is necessary. The key is exactly what the two of them do, which is move together, find a third path. And then, as you can see, simply by necessity, they're moving into a third path with, once again, Tommy and the commune and everything else. They're moving towards a third path. Do I think that's perfect? No. I think human beings are inherently push back against the idea of a single tribe, which isn't bad. I just think that for some reason our species lacks the respect to move between Fedra, the concept of Fedra, or the concept of Firefly. You can't have a third option, but we are trapped in the idea that we cannot abandon our pursuit of coming together, because if we abandon our pursuit of coming together, you lose every sense of who we are. There's this philosopher named Marshall McLuhan who said the medium is the message. What we're doing right now on Twitch, talking to people about this, is pushing humanity forward. If we weren't doing this, I wouldn't get to talk to Jordyn. I wouldn't hear Jordyn's perspective on LGBTQ issues. Mike, you wouldn't hear Jordyn's perspective on those issues, but I also wouldn't hear your perspective on any issues. And because of that, our experiences as human beings would be less.
Mm.
So Fedra pushes people towards that singular forward goal, which media does as well, but Fedra pushes people towards that goal, sans media. Without something else that ties people together, like a third thing, it all falls apart. So yes, they are jackbooted thugs. It is not necessary to have jackbooted thugs. There is no comfortable middle between jackbooted thugs and full resistance fighters, unfortunately.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that
Well
is
said.
the terror and the horror of being a human being.
Well said. Jordyn, rebuttal, support. What do you think? That was brilliant. But your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I I feel like she's right, like in a
Mhm.
lot of ways, right? Like, um, you can't necessarily have yin without the yang, right? Like like you can't have some extreme without the other, without some sort of balance. And I feel like this sort of series like represents that, right? Like where even though they like try to like venture off and get away from certain aspects of like Fedra and certain aspects of Firefly, like they ultimately encounter one aspect of the other, right? Like there isn't a middle ground where they're like, we could stay here and it'd be fine. Like we could ignore everybody and it'd be cool, right? Like it'd be like The Walking Dead for like a couple months, and then it's like, oh shit, like we're getting attacked, right? I feel like this is just the reality, right? Where it's like, um, there's good in both, and like there needs to be some sort of consensus, and we haven't found that in this series, right? Like we haven't found that, and it's basic instinct survival, right? Like it's like this is what I'm doing to survive. This is what I'm doing to like keep Joel alive or to keep Ellie alive and like to keep all this stuff alive, right? Like as humans. And we haven't seen sort of the well, when is the break? When is the breath of air, right? Like we
Mhm.
haven't seen that. And
Mhm.
I don't think we will, right? Like I don't think we will in this series. And that's what makes the series so palatable. So like is that like at the end of every episode you're like right? Like you want more and you want to see what happens and for entertainment purposes, this is fucking like crack, right? Like
Yeah.
this is
Oh yeah.
the oxygen that you need, right? Like to continue. And for people that are like, well, I'm not really into this stuff. They're like, okay, but like what next? Like I'm not really excited, but like what next? And I'm like, I'm not telling you. Like you have to fucking like wait and see, like all of us, right? Like and yeah, I just feel like it's just I just feel like this entire series is just so well done. Like it's done in a way where it's like Carolyn can watch it and be like, get those like philosophical moments where we're like,
Yep.
cool, right? Like
Yep.
me and you, Mike, can watch it, and then we're like, ooh, like that didn't make sense. But also, like, we agree with you, Carolyn. Like, it's a larger picture, right? And
Yeah.
I love it, and I love it.
I agree. And as far as how to solve, the balance of humanity, the whether or not you have the fascist, Fedras or the anarchists or whatever, the way that you solve this is just let the cordyceps win. No one is ever going to, yeah, no one's gonna question that. The cordyceps know what's up, I mean, yeah, I'm kidding. No. But that
Mike's
being said,
like, I'm giving up.
well, when you think about it, if the cordyceps take over, there's no government or fighting or bias. Everybody's just the same. It's just equal
I'm
playing
fighting.
field.
Well,
I'm
okay,
fighting.
okay. Let me offer a rebuttal here to my giant philosophical rant that I had. What
Sure.
Mike is describing, the idea of giving up and letting the cordyceps win, is effectively, yeah, it would work because you lose the individuality that human beings have. And some people would argue that that's the weakest point, but the strength of the series, as Jordyn has said, is that it is a human connection story. So at the very end, when you have Riley and you have Ellie and you have those moments that they have, that is what you work towards, and you do it just day by day. But even thinking about those final moments, I am tearing up about it because that
Yeah.
was just, I needed that as a young queer kid, as a young LGBTQIA plus kid.
Yeah.
I keep wondering what my life would have been like if I'd seen something like that when I was younger.
Period.
Mhm.
Well said as well. Cue ball, thank you. You redeemed. Hydrate and stretch. So everyone take a swig
I don't.
and stretch. Oof. Okay. This has probably been one of the most insightful conversations I think we've had on this show from a political philosophical standpoint. I'm really enjoying the conversation here and I'm grateful for it, guys. Hopefully you guys watching are also enjoying the chat. Getting into the emotional aspects of it, Carolyn, because like you touched on this point, and it really is kind of the climax of this episode. It's the moment, of course, that Ellie and Riley, they kiss and they have this wonderful, wonderful happy moment. And because The Last of Us just doesn't want us to have nice things, the cordyceps, the cordyceps infected guy goes and attacks them and bites both of them. And we get Riley, who's just kind of at peace and accepted it. And they talk about in the after show it's because she's experienced loss. But Ellie, who's never experienced that sort of loss before, is frustrated and angry and devoid of any hope and just smashing things. And then of course Riley says, hey, we've got, well, ironically enough, we've got two paths, kind of. We either kill ourselves and just end it right here, or we take the time, and just enjoy the last moments that we have here. And we don't see anything that happens next, but we kind of already know because it's implied that Ellie's not going to turn, right? So what did she do when Riley turned? If they just sat there and enjoyed themselves, which is probably one of the most gut-wrenching things that they don't show you on this in this episode or ever on the series. The implications behind it are probably even more shocking and harrowing than anything that we could have actually seen on screen. But I'd love to see what people thought about that. And it's weird. I think we're seeing things not getting posted on the chat. So I apologize, Cue Ball. I know that you're trying to type something out. Please feel free to continue trying. We want to get you in there. But Jordyn, I'd love to kick it to you and just ask you what you thought about this emotional moment, about what was unseen versus what we saw. How did you take all of this? These final moments with Riley and Ellie.
Yeah, so I kind of saw it coming when we sort of had them playing Mortal Kombat in the arcade, and then all of a sudden the infected like wakes up and is like, and I was like, oh, this might be the reason why Ellie knows she's immune to this virus that's going on, right? And then, you know, those of us that have played or know of The Last of Us 2, okay, hold on. Okay, sorry, Carolyn, spoiler alert. But like those of us that have, close yours. Those of us that have played Last of Us 2 know that this isn't like Ellie's girlfriend, right? Like we know that that's not the case. You could you can open yours. Okay, you're good. You're good. You can open yours.
Earmuffs.
Okay, good.
Good. Yeah, you're good.
Good. And so I was like, this was a pivotal moment in Ellie's journey into sort of like her being and her coming into herself, right? And um to be fair, I wasn't expecting Riley to be like, I was bit too, but I was totally expecting Ellie to be like, fuck, I'm bit. And she's like, fuck. And then she gets mad and then she's like, and to expect it and then to see Riley, I was like, God damn it. I was like, God fucking damn it. I was like, fuck, like Jesus, what the hell? And Ellie thinking that like this is their last moments on Earth, like to spend with each other, right? And then Ellie doesn't know that like she's immune at this moment, right? that was definitely like I was like, fuck, like it was almost like a repeat of episode 3, right? Where you're watching it and you're like, damn it, like, oh, like I want to heal you both, but you can't, right? Like there's no cure, there's no nothing. And then transitioning to Ellie just trying to find anything that she can save Joel with, right? I'm like, God damn it. Like this is one of the best kids like that I've known ever, right? Like and doing that. And then, towards the end when she like goes down and like holds Joel's hand and Joel's like, oh God, I'm like Pedro Pascal, like I will save you, like your daddy, like I'll save you, like
Leap
I'll
through the
save you.
TV, just punch.
He literally, I'm like, shut the fuck up, like let me just sew you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I it was heart wrenching. It was definitely Last of Us essence, right? Like we saw it, but also it kind of left me with hope in the very end, right? Like you saw it and you're like, dang, like this is um, you know, she's doing what she can to like to help him and do all that stuff. And I thought this entire episode was just beautifully done. It was done in a way where it was displayed in a way where people that hadn't done the video games or hadn't experienced it, like they could follow it and it was beautiful. But people that did do the video games, like it was, we followed and we journeyed and it was beautiful, right? So
It really was. It really felt almost like an indie movie. Like
yeah,
you see a
yeah.
coming of age indie movie of two people who are falling in love and kind of discovering that for the first time, only to get bitten by zombies and die. But yeah,
Boo.
you
Uh,
gotta wonder. I mean, like if you cut off Riley's arm at the moment she's bitten, does it stop the infection? Like I gotta wonder, but
This is a
I
Walking Dead. We don't
yeah,
know.
that's true,
is everybody already infected?
I don't think so. I
Okay,
would
good.
hope not, but
Good. Okay, there
it's
we go.
yeah. Yeah. But I mean like if it spreads through your bloodstream and you cut it off. Yeah, I wanted to Carolyn, I definitely want to get your thoughts on this emotional ending, but before I do, because our friend Cue Ball has been trying to paste this for a while, I wanted to read it off. Cue Ball said, relating to Jordyn's point, we do need more LGBTQ characters being normalized in these shows. Here, here. If we can continue to see and watch them, it would lead us to a better future and community overall. Increased tolerance, absolutely. One would, I would hope, anyways, that would be the case. But well stated, Cue Ball, and agreed. And then Boba Fett also said, I hope this doesn't come off as rude, and I apologize in advance. But if I may share, the show is one of the first shows where gay couples feel natural in the writing.
Yeah.
Like sometimes on some shows, it feels like they put something in there for the views and it makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I give a lot of props to the show for making it beautiful. You are not coming off as rude at all, Boba Fett. You are actually coming off as very real, and that I appreciate so much.
Mm.
Studios, a lot of times, if I may, and forgive me, guys, I'm going to get on a soapbox really quickly.
Do it.
Studios have a tendency to pander, and
Yep.
it's not because they actually give a crap about the communities that they're trying to actually that they think they're supporting. They're really not in it for the support of those communities. They're in it for the community's money, and that's all they
Critical
care about.
capitalism.
So yeah, so there's a lot of cash grabbing bull crap that happens. I hate to say it too because I love Marvel, I love Star Wars, I love Disney as well. But and Carolyn, no offense, sorry, I hope I'm not crossing any lines here, but I think that they do it a lot. They queer bait a lot on their shows and their movies. They'll put in throwaway scenes of characters that are gay, not because they actually care about these characters, but because they think it's going to attract audiences within the LGBTQ community. And it actually comes across as soulless and pandering and condescending in a way, because it's like, hey, we'll throw you a bone here. here are these characters. They're not particularly important characters, but they're gay. So there you go. And then they'll pat themselves on the back for it and go, hey, we created the first gay characters in Star Wars. Well, if you actually cared that much about the gay community, why isn't your character at the front and center of your goddamn Star Wars story? Why are they on the freaking side? And they're just like, oh, we pass over them with the camera. And now we're going back to the straight people, or whoever, or they'll toss in a line like, she's got help, when nothing at all called for it in the middle of a movie, and it's just because you're trying to pander and make money. So I'm going to get off my soapbox. Last of Us is actually one of those few times where these issues are inherent in the storytelling and the characters, and it's not at all to do with trying to sell this on specific communities. It's trying to paint a picture of who these characters are, and unify these characters with the human experience, because the LGBTQ community needs to be acknowledged in these shows and in these movies as human experiences that are on par with everyone else's human experiences. The universality of it, first loves, people that we growing up, discovering yourself, all of that are things that we should be relating to, but we have a hard time relating to it because unfortunately bigotry still exists in this nation. And if we normalize it, if we make these stories important, and if we make these stories things that people can relate to on a fundamental level, inherent to these characters that are the most important things about these shows, then I think we definitely can make a damn difference in this in entertainment. And here's hoping that happens in the future. So yeah. Carolyn, I'm so sorry. I'm getting off my soapbox. I delayed your response really quickly. But I'd love to get into your emotional reaction to all this. You shared a little bit of it with us. Please share more, because we want to hear everything that you felt when Riley and Ellie kind of spent their final moments together.
It's interesting that you bring up normalizing these kinds of reactions, because apart from the absolute and utter bigotry that came from episode 3, there are a lot of people who are on the opposite side who have enjoyed the show. And I think that I find that very interesting, and one can only hope that the power of art will reach across those kinds of things. And if it doesn't, it betrays hypocrisy in the highest form, pure and simple. Because you can't say, oh, I love this aspect, but you can't love the core of a particular character. Interesting. It is interesting that you do that. I'm curious. I will do my best to be brief. I think that this whole episode, as someone who grew up as a femme presenting queer person, I felt it was very warm and fuzzy to see this. It's not something that I think you would normally see in the kind of shows that I like. I don't like shows that are just very romancy. I don't like I don't like comedies that have this kind of stuff. And if you're in the LGBTQ community, you're either in a comedy where you're funny and you're gay, or you're in a tragedy where you're funny and you're gay. This was a tragedy, but it was also kind of funny. It just felt very, and it was in a sci-fi. And you never get to see that. You don't see in sci-fi. You just see, you're either in a very real world, painful, tragic situation, or you're in a very real world, funny situation where you're just like, slay queen, and you say that and you feel so, and you're doing it just to make somebody else feel good, and you're like, oh, okay. Or in my case, you'd be like, ugh, I'm gonna go to Home Depot. I think Jordyn knows the video I'm referring to.
Go to Ace. All
right, bitch. Right. So, but that's just it. It's like you have it was just really nice to see, and the fact that it was a very Romeo and Juliet-esque story too. But the core of it is, and the core of all of my points this evening are simply that much like Neil Druckmann said in the end of the show, for Ellie, it is about living in every single moment. And that is what you should do, no matter the circumstances, because the best things in life come from living fully and utterly in every single moment. And it is the hardest thing that any human being can do. no matter who you are or where you come from, living in every single moment. But that's what I think the core message of the show is trying to convey, at least in this episode, is live fully and completely in every single moment that you exist. The rest of it will be
well said. Guys, I know that we could do this forever. This was such an insightful, brilliant, wonderful conversation. Getting to talk to you guys about this. It's important for us to touch on these topics with a show like this, especially because the show's not pulling any punches in its criticisms of not just media and how media typically interprets these things versus how they should interpret these things and represent the LGBT community, but also in the political spectrum and what we could potentially do as human beings to actually get together. And I think we touched on so much of that today. So grateful for the conversation. I think everybody watching this is 100 times smarter because of you guys, and I appreciate it. On that note, I think we'll have to wrap it up. But Jordyn, I'll kick it to you. Where can everyone find you? And do you have any final words?
Yes, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram, todayStars13. I post funny stories. I don't post any funny posts. It takes too long to post posts, and I'm like, I just can't do it. Also, I'm representing one of our local, also is always on all the time, Kenjinator. Kenj, if you're watching,
right.
Got my Gatewalker Saga sweater. I'm so happy. It's so warm. Also, y'all better fucking order this shit because it's so warm. And I'm like, it's raining. What? There's a hood. Hey. So, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, yeah, there it is.
That Gatewalker Saga sweatshirt looks really, really cozy, really comfortable, and I love the design. It definitely, hats off to the Kenjinator and his pops, because they've got the Gatewalker Saga every Sunday, I think, on Twitch.
Yeah.
We miss you, Kenji. Hopefully you're doing okay, buddy, and hopefully we'll get to chat with you at the next one. Amazing. Carolyn, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Carolyn's Geek Out, CarolynS Geek Out, and then on Twitter, for as long as we have Twitter, at Carolyn and then today my shirt is not nearly as cool as Gatewalker, but my shirt is anti-censorship. My 1980s anti-censorship shirt that my stepdad gave me. But it's not nearly as cool as supporting your friend's podcast, which you should always do. And as for final words, my only final words are remember, live in every single moment. And always remember that while you might be moving towards a singular group, what makes you the best part of that group is that you're special and individual.
Absolutely. And I've been Mike Manalo, at TidyBullBoy182 on Instagram and Twitter, but also on the nerdsofcolor.org, whattowatch.com, and that's at LA. And my final words are, let the cordyceps win. Let them take over the world. Cordyceps rule forever. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Mike!
No. Live fully.
You've got the Kent Brockman hair from The Simpsons. You're like, I for one welcome our new mushroom overlords.
Our new mushroom overlords. No. In all seriousness, live hard, love hard, and of course, tune in to the next episode of Nom Talk Network and Basic Binges. The next show will be talking about Peter Pan. Who knows how to live better than Peter Pan, right? And that'll be Wednesday. But if you guys can't tune into that, then come on back next Monday. Same Cordyceps channel, same Cordyceps time. And until then, keep safe, keep warm, and thanks again for watching. We love you guys.
All right.